sometimes challenging as a defender, as an incident responder, as a threat intelligence professional, because we obviously, we are at odds with the adversary. We want to do right by our customers and by the victims of exploitation. But we sometimes see some stuff and we think, that was a pretty cool idea. I mean, you got to give it to, that was creative.
Welcome to the Talos Threat Perspective. I'm Hazel Burton. This quarter, one pattern kept showing up. Attackers aren't necessarily breaking in with shiny new tools, they're just settling in and getting comfortable using yours. Let's start with a 60-second summary of the just released Talos Quarterly Trends Report, now available on the Talos blog. Over 60% of incidents began with the exploitation of public facing applications, and that is up from less than 10% last quarter. That is most likely due to this next point. Almost 40% of engagements involved some kind of tool shell activity. A third of engagements featured post exploitation phishing from compromised accounts. That is up from 25% last quarter, with credential harvesting as the main goal. Now, ransomware dropped to about 20% of cases. That is down from the previous quarter when it was around 50% of cases. We did see some new variants, however. Warlock, Babuk, and Kraken. We saw those for the first time, and they joined returning families Cheelin and Lockbit. Cheelin, in particular, were ramping up their activities. Public administration organizations were the most targeted sector this quarter. That is the first time this has happened in the history of our reports. Now, since so many roads led back to Toolshell this quarter, we're going to start with that. In one case, attackers started with a public SharePoint server and then hopped over to an internal database through a trusted connection. A few weeks later, ransomware finished the job. I asked Bill how often we see that 1-2 punch.
Yeah, extremely common, Hazel. It's an interesting dynamic that we see across the board now, where we see multiple different vulnerabilities like this that kind of can be leveraged, not only like you said, to move laterally or escalate privileges within the environment, but we see it a lot with honestly with the built-in tools, right? So instead of living off the land binaries again.
Yeah, I mean, logging use has been the name of the game for most of the past year. It's a constant battle from a malware perspective or a custom tooling perspective. It's the battle of the adversary trying to outpace the defenders in terms of, what can I develop? How fast can I iterate? Lulbins kind of takes that out of the equation because the tools are there and they're known legitimate tools. It then becomes a matter of how can I use this tool most creatively or in a way that is likely to fly under the radar so I can complete my actions on objectives without any detection.
Yeah, and once an attacker blends in, they move fast. So, how do we go back one step and stop them from blending in the first place?
This goes from the junior analyst, and I feel really that all the way up to this to the at least the CISO should be aware of the common living off the land binaries, right? So like the LOLBAS project or something is only like 125 or so binaries, right? Like so, if you know those, it'll give you that spidey senses when you see something anomalous. And so, like, they're going to do the reconnaissance. If you don't do your legwork to know your environment, I assure you, they are going to.
Yep, the most competent attackers don't guess, they audit. Now we're coming towards the end of the year, and I think if this year has a theme from an attacker's perspective, it would be living off what's already there. We just covered living off the land. We're now going to talk about living off your inbox. Now, there has been an increase in post exploitation phishing attacks, or as Craig likes to call them, and it is a hill he is willing to die on, cascading business email compromise. In one particular engagement, the adversary used a compromised Microsoft 365 account to send almost 3,000 emails to internal staff and external partners. To stay hidden, they changed the email management rules so that the sent phishing messages and any replies disappeared from view.
Adversaries get into a mailbox, and as part of maintaining persistence, but also avoiding detection. They create rules that will delete messages that come back in as a response to their outbound malicious messages. They will use other types of rules to, kind of cover their tracks and make sure that the user is less likely to detect their presence while they're making use of that mailbox. One of the things that we, from a Talos IR perspective and from a network defender perspective, that we talk about all the time is, can you effectively identify malicious inbox rules across your environment, not just for a single user box, not just for the last 90 days? And what you might find is, of a single victim. Okay, this mailbox got popped. I know that the adversary created this rule. I know what happened here. But we've actually run investigations on the incident response side where we take all of the rules for all of the users and we realize this rule in this mailbox was also created in these three other mailboxes for these three other users that we didn't even know about.
So, persistence is one thing. Turning someone's mailbox into some kind of control panel is quite another. But Bill has seen this playbook evolve over the years.
I mean, I can remember when there was spam that had IP tables changes, like because I'm that kind of old, right? Like it was on Pine, so we're not going to get into that. No one look at me directly. Most of the time, when we see these things, especially something like that, it's spreading their foothold within the environment, getting more than just one particular persistence route. And then in that instance, like Craig said, getting hold of more email accounts for further action, right? Especially if they do good reconnaissance on the end users that they have.
Attackers are not just breaking in, they are staying in. This next example is particularly interesting. In one ransomware case, they used a tool that defenders use all the time, and they installed an older version of it to maintain persistence.
It's sometimes challenging as a defender, as an incident responder, as a threat intelligence professional, because we obviously, we are at odds with the adversary. We want to do right by our customers and by the victims of exploitation. But we sometimes see some stuff and we think, that was a pretty cool idea. I mean, you got to give it to, that was creative. So during an engagement investigation that we were running, one of our investigators saw a suspicious remote desktop RDP connection into a system, and then what looked like uh, just a download from an adversary hosting site of an MSI, executed the MSI. And as the investigation team was looking at what came next, they thought, well, that looks a lot like Velociraptor. And for anyone that isn't familiar, Velociraptor is a very well known and very powerful digital forensics and incident response tool. They downloaded it, they deployed it, and it is extremely powerful because you can dump configurations, you can delete files, you can exfiltrate files, you can, enumerate the system. Again, adversary using tools that are legitimate tools used by defenders and the protectors of our network environments, and abusing it to essentially create an extremely powerful backdoor.
There's something bleakly elegant about that, emphasis on the bleakly, in that it is turning a forensic tool into a foothold. And that has been the theme of a lot of engagements, not only this quarter, but this year, using your own tools against you. And that raises an even harder question. How do you distinguish between authorized and adversarial use of the same toolset? Now, the answer is a few things, but a lot of it comes down to the effectiveness of your threat intelligence program.
So when we have situations like adversaries using Velociraptor, or take out Velociraptor and think of any legitimate application, when you have situations like multiple vulnerabilities being chained together, so you're not just looking for a single thing, like is this system vulnerable to this vulnerability, or is it vulnerable to all these vulnerabilities? Being able to action your threat intelligence quickly is incredibly important in situations like this. And that's something that, we're Talos. We do this day in and day out. We've been doing it for forever. But maybe we need to actually be talking about it more in terms of, how are you running your threat intelligence program? What is the maturity of that program? And how are you leveraging that information, that data that you're receiving from entities like Talos and others as well?
That is, of course, a conversation that you can have with us as Talos, or of course, any security partner that you work closely with. The key, of course, is that the better that you know your environment, the fewer surprises it holds. For more details on what we have been seeing, you can read the full Talos IR quarterly trends report now at blog.talosintelligence.com. I will put a link to that in the description. Do subscribe to the Cisco Talos YouTube channel to get notified when new episodes of the Talos Threat Perspective drop. Thank you again for watching and take care.